When we look at the map of the Middle East, we find a map that is always changing. From ancient times to medieval times to the 21st century, the map has always been changing. In general, the map that we see now is the map that was created after World War I. It was created by the British and the French. In fact, the borders of Israel, Jordan, and Iraq were all created by the British and the French. These borders were created for colonial ideas, but in fact they were not practical in who they represented. For example, Iraq is really a nation of three parties: the Kurds, the Sunnis, and the Shiites. Even Syria is a nation that is full of different peoples of Alawite, Druze, Sunnis, and Shiites, and Kurds. These borders were created for colonial ideas, but now, with democracy and weakened governments, we find that these colonial borders are falling apart, with the idea that people want to represent themselves and be free of colonial ideas of power. With the war in Syria, a war that happened because people wanted to be free from dictatorship, different rebel forces started to fight against the army of Syria. One army, rebel army, that became very powerful was called ISIS. They took over parts of northern Syria, parts of Aleppo, and then into Iraq. As they expanded, with the turmoil that was going on in Iraq, they were able to take great portions of central and western, western and central and northern Iraq. Places like Mosul, the second largest city in Iraq. ISIS is an army of Islamic ideas. They believe that there should be a caliphate. There should be an Islamic power that is all-inclusive, all-empowering of Sunni powers. There shouldn't be anybody in power in this region except for Sunnis. If you're not Sunni, you're not welcome. Now, in the past, Islamic governments were willing to accept minorities into their countries. Sometimes some countries weren't willing to do that, but overall, there's always been a representative in every of these Islamic countries of minorities. In this new ISIS power, any minorities are not welcomed. If you are not Sunni, you are not part of the group. They are shooting and killing people at random just because they are not Sunni Arab. Now, the Kurds that live in northern Syria and in northern Iraq have been fighting against them and have been very successful in taking ground from them. But recently, they've been losing ground to ISIS for whatever reason. They're begging the Americans to bring in airstrikes upon ISIS to try to give them the upper hand. But the Americans have been reluctant in doing so because they don't want to give the Kurds the upper hand against the Shiites in the south of Iraq. Because overall, the Kurds do want independence from the Shiites of the south. So therefore, if the Americans bomb ISIS in northern Iraq and northern Syria and give the Kurds the upper hand, it will hurt the Shiites by trying to keep control of the Kurds in the north. So therefore, the Americans are saying, we're only going to bomb ISIS if ultimately ISIS is a threat to American sources on the ground in parts of Kurdistan. Ultimately, ISIS has the right to be independent. They have the right to fight because that's what democracy is all about. But they don't have the right to be going and killing random people just because those people are not Sunni Muslims. ISIS, I have a problem with because I do believe in democracy. I do believe that every nation has the right, even the Palestinians, to fight for their own independence, to fight for their own freedom of being a nation of their own. But when it comes to terrorism, when it comes to Palestinians killing civilians for their own desire, and ISIS killing minority people, Christians, whatever, because they just feel like it, that's where I have a problem. That's where I draw the line in saying you have the right to be independent, you have the right to make your own nation, but not at the expense of other people just because they're in your way. There are ways of dealing with the situation, whether you push them out or, just live with the minorities. But when you kill them and when you terrorize them, that's another story. The people in eastern Ukraine, they have the right to be independent. They have the right to join Russia. They are the majority of the region. They have the right to join. But if they were to go and start using terror and killing people just for random reasons, there's a line to be drawn. Almost every nation in the world has fought for their independence. No nation in the world would not exist if they didn't fight at some point in their history for independence. The most African nations, like Kenya, fought for their independence against the British. Even the British fought for their own independence against the French and the Vikings. And the French fought for their independence against the British, so forth and so forth. Everybody has fought at some point or another for their independence. It's a normal way of getting what you want. But there's a way of doing it. And what ISIS is doing is completely wrong. Are they a threat to America? For the moment, no. But they do have $1 billion, and how they spend it and where they put it is a question mark. I think maybe America's a little worried that if they attack ISIS, will ISIS use it to attack America? Maybe. Should we use diplomatic methods to talk to ISIS? Absolutely. By not talking to ISIS, that is a mistake. We should be talking to them and try to negotiate with them, just like we negotiate with all terrorist groups like Hamas and the Palestinian Authority and in Afghanistan. America negotiates all the time with terrorists. Why not ISIS? ISIS, they have an idea of taking over the whole Middle East. But practically speaking, if we can get them to be satisfied with the northern parts of Syria and northern Iraq, maybe we can control the situation. The bottom line is, ISIS is a threat, but it can be controlled if we use our minds instead of our pride. God bless you all, and take care.